Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I am Undead Sick 83, and this is episode 6 of the Cult Cinema podcast. And today I'm once again joined by a guest, and as you can see, he's a new face here, but he's also a fellow YouTuber, James from Poliziotteschi Gialli Reviews. James, how are you doing today? And can you see me good? Can you hear me good?
I am well. Yeah, it all sounds good. And yeah, I can see you just fine.
Okay, there you go. So thank you for deciding that you wanted to do this with me. That's a lot of fun. At least I think we're going to have fun. And
I think so, yeah.
yeah. It's it took some, discussing and stuff to get a schedule and a time and stuff, but we're here. So yeah. And let me start by introducing. I'm going to tell what we are going to talk about. So if you give me a minute. So episode 6, of course, of the Cult Cinema podcast. And today we are going to talk about Italian director ENZO G.CASTELLARI, who we are both a fan of, I think. So it's going to be fun. So before we dive into the actual movies, James, can you tell me and the audience, please, in general, what was your first sort of exposure to ENZO G.CASTELLARI? What was the first film you ever saw? Can you give us a little background in how you discovered ENZO G.CASTELLARI?
Sure. I mean, I think like a lot of people, the first exposure to just like the name is kind of from the Tarantino movie Inglourious Bastards, where you'll hear like ENZO Girolami. And so that's the first time I think I'd ever heard him mentioned. And so Inglourious Bastards, the movie, was always a little bit on my radar, but it took me several years before I actually saw that. But really, I started to watch Castellari's film and Poliziotteschi in general in just a few years ago in about 2020. And that's when I really just fell in love with the genre and a lot of the different films being made then in Italy. So the crime films of the 1970s. And definitely one of the names you're going to just see mentioned all the time there is Castellari's name. And I think the first film I saw was actually one of the ones that we'll be talking about today, which is High Crime. It was not long before I saw a bunch of the other Eurocrime films, but those are kind of my introduction. And then since then, I've seen a lot more from Castellari, some of his Westerns, as well as some of his like later films, like the Last Shark Hunter, things like that are kind of fun, but deeper cuts. So yeah, I'm a fan of his for sure.
Yeah, I think we both are. Last Shark Hunter is not his proudest moment, maybe, but it's but interesting that you discovered him in 2020. I have to go back a little bit because it's like when I was like, I think I was 16 years old. I'm 41 now, but when I was 16 years old, and I'm from Holland, by the way, and back then we only had like 3, I think maybe 4 TV channels on the air, and one of those TV channels in the weekend would do nothing but show TV shows and movies, which is of course which was paradise for me. But and I think I saw the first movie I saw was Keoma, I think.
Okay.
The Western, of course. One of his later Westerns, also a Western that is kind of late in the era of the spaghetti Westerns, of course. But I just remember seeing that and I was used to American Westerns. And so spaghetti Westerns, watching Keoma, I was like, what is this? This is so different and just really original. And it feels so strange to it. It has such a strange vibe to it, and of course the dubbing didn't bother me as much as it does now. But that's kind of a thing. But just the way it was shot and like the scene with the barrel with the shotgun and stuff. It's like those innovative things. It's like, wow, this is really different. And that was, I think, my first experience with ENZO G.CASTELLARI. And but back then I thought they were all American films. I didn't know any better. So but later on I researched it, and internet came around, and then you find out stuff, of course. But I think it's interesting that Enzo G. Castellari is a very interesting director in terms of most Italian film directors tend to focus on one genre, like Dario Argento is giallo,
Sure.
basically, and Umberto Lenzi is he did some giallos, but mostly it's Poliziotteschi. And but Enzo G. Castellari, he did some of everything. He made westerns, Poliziotteschi, of course. I think he only made one giallo, I believe.
Yeah,
it was
Cold Eyes of Fear.
Fear, with Frank Wolf, I believe. So only one giallo, and then of course later on, I think he made some. Wasn't he the one who made the Mad Max ripoffs, like the Bronx Warriors? I believe it was.
Yes, I think he did a couple of those.
Yeah. And of course, The Last Shark Hunter, which is kind of like the end of his career, not his proudest work, but and but I think he's a very interesting director in that regard. So yeah. So shall we just announce the movies that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, let's do it. And real quick, I think now that you mention it, I think I saw Keoma a long time before I saw his other film. So I think I
really
watched that when I was watching spaghetti westerns over a decade ago. So
yeah, right.
So yeah, a quick amendment, but I didn't really dive deep into his filmography until 2020 and later.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. And yeah, let's announce the movies that we're going to talk about. So as usual on this podcast, we are going to discuss 2 films of this director. And we are going to talk about High Crime, like James mentioned, and we are going to discuss the Big Racket, also a film of Enzo G. Castellari. So should be interesting. So which movie, I always ask this of my guests, which movie do you want to start with first?
Let's start with High Crime. I think that one chronologically comes first, and I think it makes a little more sense to talk about. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Okay, so cool. High Crime. So High Crime, of course, Enzo G. Castellari. It was released in 1973, I believe. A quick synopsis. I always do this. Quick synopsis. A righteous police inspector fights to bring down a powerful drug ring in Genoa, causing the deaths of key suspects and those closest to him in a more or less equal measure. Yeah, that basically sums it up. And these synopses are also, they're so weird all the time. It's they tend to spoil so much. But anyway, but so yeah, High Crime. So as this was your first, maybe your second after Keoma, but one of you first anyway, as this was one of your first films that you saw of Enzo G. Castellari, before we go into the positives and negatives and stuff, what are your some of your general thoughts on a movie like High Crime?
Yeah, I think in many ways this one is a very good representation of kind of the Poliziotteschi and kind of what it represents. Just in terms of it brings a lot of the different elements that people would come to associate with the genre. And I think it's also a good representative film of Castellari as well. You see a lot of his strengths in terms of framing and staging action and things like that are definitely present. You have some really nice set pieces in this film as well as some great uses of location. So I think it's a very solid film. I don't know that it's one of those films that they made it and it was so influential that people were making kind of very similar films. Of course, you have the Maurizio Merli ones that are pretty much directly ripped from the Franco Nero character in this. So it's one that, if you see enough Poliziotteschi's, you're going to have seen films that are definitely influenced by this that are taking a lot from it. So I think it's kind of one of those films that really is a nice blueprint, but also is just, it's a pretty rock solid film in my opinion. It has a lot of things that people that like this sort of 1970s crime films are going to enjoy.
Yeah, it's definitely a trendsetter. You're right about that. And I think if you, like you said, if you watch multiple Poliziotteschi's, they sort of seep into each other. For most of the time, they have a lot of the same nuances and stuff. But I think you're right that this is definitely was a trendsetter. And I think it's also interesting that the Poliziotteschi is like the only real subgenre, I think, of the Italian cinema that is really, really Italian, because it's really a social commentary on what was happening in their own country. I think, in the 60s, 70s, we all know this if we are fans. Like, there was like a huge crime wave in Italy at the time, and police officers who still had like really fascist mentalities. The Red Guard, like Soviet people, Soviet spies posing as officers of the law. Of course, terrorists, like the bombing of several buildings, anarchism, and all of that. It was a very heavy period in Italy at the time, and I think it's very interesting that some of these Poliziotteschi are just fun to watch. They are fun, like action films, but a lot of them have certain political and social commentaries as well. If you look at a movie like Silent Action of Sergio Martino, I mean, that's like filled with metaphors and political intrigue of the time and stuff. So I think that makes it. I don't know if best and favorite are different, but it certainly makes it a very interesting subgenre in the entire catalog of the Italian film sort of industry. So how do you look at like the Poliziotteschi in like as a genre in like overall in contrast to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly possible to be just very entertained by the films without diving too much into politics. But I think you're absolutely right that there's definitely something specifically dealing with Italy at the time that spoke to probably audiences, and there's a reason why they made a lot of these, because they were popular. And I mean, like, if you are curious and want to do your own research for some of your audience out there, like look up the Years of Lead in Italy, and then you can read a lot about like some of the political turmoil and things that were going on at the time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that I think people that dive into it now might have a hard time. It's hard. Well, on one hand, it's hard to kind of relate to that specific time just because it's such a specific moment in history in Italy.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's quite a long time ago. And in other ways, kind of like the sort of more reactionary, some people might say more fascist aspects of them, of like kind of the tough cops and things like that. I think that those are things that probably, they're certainly not making cop films in the same way that they were back then. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that the more you know about it, it adds like another element of texture or richness to it that you can sort of like look at it and appreciate it. And high crime, I think more than the big racket probably plays into a little bit more of kind of like what was going on at that time. For me, at least, the big racket, it plays into kind of the Years of Lead as well, but it's a little bit more on the more absurd elements. It's like the gang is so evil, it's almost mythological. So for me, at least, that almost plays like the more updated, the crime movie version of something like a Italian Western that's like dealing more with like mythological themes rather than being grounded in more realism. Not that high crime is like super realistic or anything, but it's like based off of stuff that's directly from the news. And you can tell there's stuff that's based off of what's going on in Italy at the time.
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to say about the big racket as well, but we'll get there. But I mean, it's definitely, I know some American. I mean, you're American too, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you from exactly?
I'm from Seattle. It's in the west coast of the U.S.
Oh, Seattle. Okay. So I know some people that are actually from the East Coast, and I recommended some of these films to them. And well, you have a different point of view, but most people that I recommended to are like what you say, like they want their cop, male protagonist to be, or female to be, like straightforward and very honest and honorable and stuff like that. And I said to them basically, like, that's not what you should look for in Italian cinema. Italian cinema is much more nuanced. The morality is very different. The bad guy can end up being the hero and all of that stuff. And I think it's somewhat of an acquired taste, maybe, that maybe some people aren't ready for. Hopefully one day they will discover it. I'm sure they will with all of these like labels that are putting it out now. But I think it's a little less acceptable right now than it was back then, because like you said, it's a product of the time. And although I would say a lot of these elements that we see in Poliziotteschi are, I think, I think they are very valuable in our present society as well. So, but maybe that's just me. So it's
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I personally, I like the era and the time that these take place. And if you look at it in kind of like a fuller conversation of more global films too, I mean, these films were, in addition to kind of taking that sort of local context of the years of lead, they were riffing heavily on American films too. I mean, Castellari has talked very openly about how he's inspired by Bullet in this film. Dirty Harry and French Connection are usually seen as like, yeah, exactly. French Connection, I think in this one, especially if you watch them side by side, I think you'll see a lot of connections in terms of how like the action is done. I mean, he's even taking Fernando Rey directly from that movie into here too. So, I mean, those American films, I think we're also willing to kind of head into a little bit murkier territory than the stuff that's coming out now. And for me personally, I prefer the stuff from like the crime films from the 70s. That's just comfort food for me compared to like crime films coming out now.
Right. Well, it's comfort food, but also I think it has. I think I recently watched, what was it again? I think Nobody. I think it was with I forgot the name, who plays Saul in Better Call Saul.
Odenkirk. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I forgot the name, but so I saw Nobody, and it's a fun film. I mean, it's fun to watch, but if you go back to the 70s and you look at the French Connection, or you don't even have to look at crime films. You can look at like political thrillers, like The Day of the Jackal, or those movies have such heavy themes to them and have such great context for the era that it has a message. It actually has a message, and I think that is what's missing from movies nowadays. That kind of movies, in my opinion, I feel like it's missing that a bit. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
I do. Yeah, and I mean, I think films today, they play it so safe in terms of like things, and these Italian films, I mean, like, sometimes they're just like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we're just going to go for it. And we're going to try some stuff. Exactly. We're going to kill some kids. we're going to have like explosions, killing police officers. And it's like, wow, did that just happen? And so I like that kind of like dangerous. We're just going to DIY, do some like incredible car chases through these streets and some stunts and things like that. So I like that sense of danger, and for me at least, that's far more exciting than something that might be more higher budget, but or more contemporary. But it's like safe. You know exactly where it's going.
Yeah, exactly. So if you allow me, I would like to start with the first positive thing for this movie, because I would like to start with the positives, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this brings me into actually the first part of what my positives are. The first thing I want to mention is that, like, even though the morality issues and stuff are very intriguing in movies like this, sometimes it just feels really good to just get a straightforward good guy police officer, detective. And in this film, it actually does. Belly is a very honest, honorable, straightforward cop. And that's like you said, it's comfort food. Sometimes that's just nice to see. And, and because, like I said, as much as I love the main characters having like gray areas to them and stuff, sometimes you just want an honorable, kind, respectable hero, like Franco Nero's Belly, Inspector Belly. And James Whitmore's Commissioner Scavino as well, of course, who is a very honorable and straightforward, noble kind of police commissioner. And it's just a nice and fun feeling when you have like a team of honest heroes, I guess. So how do you feel about that in the context of this film? Would you have rather had a little bit more of a gray area, or how do you feel about those characters?
I like them too. I'm totally okay with a grayer area as well. I mean, we talked a bit about French Connection being connected to this film. I think the character in French Connection, Popeye, Gene Hackman's character, is far more in that gray territory and far a little bit dirtier than Franco Nero's version here. But I will say that Nero, compared to maybe some of his other performances, like I don't know if you've seen the Damiani films that come out a couple of years earlier.
I've recently started to discover them, because that was like, out of all the Italian directors I have seen, Damiano was actually someone that I just discovered, and his films are incredible. They are incredible. But sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting to see Castellari use him versus Damiani, where Damiani, I think he's like, in some of the films, he's almost so young, he's almost naive, and something like, what's that film? Day of the Owl. But this film, he's like very big. He's very energetic. He's almost unhinged. He's like definitely like, kind of ready to take action, even though I think I think everyone would agree that he's ultimately kind of the protagonist. He's a good cop. But his performance, he plays it very, very differently than he does in like other films.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly true. And you're right. He definitely throws a punch when he like needs to. But I think, overall, I think he's just a very clear-cut hero character, and I appreciate that about this film. So what are some of your positives with High Crime?
For me, the positive of this could be extended to kind of the Poliziotteschi or the Italian crime films in general, but I love the use of locations here. Like I think a lot of this film takes place in Genoa, which Castellari would use again in Street Law. But like from the get-go, he's using the locations just fantastically. We have a couple moments where he's going under the docks. There's a very creative use of a golf course where we have like a dirt bike coming onto it too. Like the car stunts are really incredible. So no surprise that Remy Julian was involved as far as like kind of like bringing in some of like those really A tier car stunts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the film just starts with the strength from like set piece to set piece. So I really like just the way action and all of that stuff is staged in like these real locations. For me, at least, that's definitely one of the big joys of High Crime.
Yeah, exactly true. And also I love the setting of these, like you said, these coastal cities, because it feels so unique, I mean, most Poliziotteschi are set in Rome or Milan or Naples, and the fact that you have like a coastal town that is like at the ocean and stuff, it gives it like an almost exotic and sort of tropical feel, like you're in the French Riviera or something like that, I love that. I love the setting for it. And of course, he shoots a lot with just natural lighting without any artificial lights, which I think really helps the film as well. And just the start of the movie with just a long view into the tunnel that leads out into the harbor and stuff, and you have like, what is going on here? And then it goes straight into like a drug deal or whatever. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the location as well. Yeah, and I think he shot all of this in Genoa as well. Maybe some of it in Marseille, but I think most of it he shot in Genoa, right? I think he did.
I would assume so. Yeah, I think a little bit in Marseille. I mean, a little bit of the film is set in Marseille, which, again, brings up French Connection. But I would assume most of it was shot in Genoa.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, interiors are all done in the studio in Rome. But you mentioned Fernando Rey, so let's mention the rest of the cast for a moment, because Fernando Rey, oh my God, Fernando Rey is such a humble but very nasty villain in this film, who has this sort of strange kind of respect still for the police force. It's such an interesting, like, that's a gray character. I mean, he's a villain, or the villain. Well, not really, but he's a villain anyway. But he's like, he has this sort of weird respect for Inspector Belly as well, which is kind of interesting. And the funny thing is that you never get any backstory on like that relationship or that sort of connection that they build. Isn't that kind of funny?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, because it does kind of imply that like these two have known each other for a while and have kind of been like adversaries. So it is interesting, because I mean, it's very different from how Friedkin uses him in French Connection, where he's kind of just like more of your like smirking French villain in that film.
Exactly.
So no, I mean, him and James Whitmore, I feel like they really helped give this film like just a sense of like gravitas. Like both those are like kind of like your veteran middle-aged actors at this point. So they have just like a sense of gravity towards them, which I think plays really well off of like the much younger Franco Nero at this time.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you mentioned James Whitmore. My favorite scene of James Whitmore in this film is actually when they are at the cliff and he's like berating and basically just ranting against Belly about like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're not sitting in my chair. You don't know fuck all about how hard this job is. You pretentious, like it's so good. But I mean, he means very well. He means to sort of like reel him in and like, look, you have to look at this from a different angle. You have to play the long game, which is irritating, but the quiet and slow game, because otherwise it's gonna fail. But I love that scene, how he goes off against, it's I love James Whitmore.
Yeah. No, he acts really well with Nero. They have some great chemistry together. He also, do we spoil films in this or not?
I mean, I talked about this with someone else in a previous podcast. I mean, these movies are like 40 years old, 50 years old. So I always say, if you haven't seen them now, you probably never will. But just in case, if anyone wants to, spoilers. So we're talking spoilers here. But if you haven't seen the movie yet, you're probably never going to see it. So you're good to talk about spoilers. Go on.
Okay, yeah. Well, he also has a great death, just the way.
Oh yeah,
with the music and the slow motion and stuff. And I feel like that scene is just very. I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely like a Castellari film. I feel like other Italian directors would not show it in the same way, but it's very beautiful. It's very well staged. The slow motion and just everything, the De Angelis brothers score, everything coming together on that one too. So yeah, I mean, I like the scene that you're talking about. My other favorite scene is just his death scene. So
yeah, no, exactly. And also it's like, because you have been going with what's his name again, Scavino, because you have been going with Scavino for so long, because I think he gets killed in like the first part of the third act, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But because you have gone with him for so long, I mean, that it's really shocking, but it's very emotional, because you're like, no, not him. Come on. That's like probably the most honest guy in the city. And you're like, what? So it packs a punch as well. You feel really bad in the end.
Yeah, I mean, and in the end, they just go after everyone. I mean, like Nero's own daughter and his girlfriend. I mean, it's like from the beginning, you're like, okay, these guys are bad guys. They kill all the cops at the very beginning, although you don't have any connection to those cops. And then you establish connections to these different characters, and it just pretty much kills everyone but Nero.
Yeah, exactly. But on top of that, let's talk about, that's another thing I love about this film is like I love the emotional drama and the family element of this film. You know, Franco Nero with not just his girlfriend. His girlfriend is lovely. She's just a lovely character. And also his daughter, of course, played by ENZO G.CASTELLARI's actual daughter, of course. And I think, yes, she's called, what's she called again? Anita, right? In this film.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
something
have
like
the
that.
name
But
in front of
anyway,
me either.
it's Stefania Castellari, of course. But I love the family unit in this film. And I think, you know, ENZO G.CASTELLARI, he might have taken like a chapter out of Steven Spielberg's book, because like, you know, Steven Spielberg does this all the time as well. Like, it's just, you know, nobody is cheating on each other. You know, nobody's having alcohol issues. Nobody's beating up their kids or whatever. No, it's just a nice little loving family unit. And the relationship with, again, the girlfriend, I believe Corinne is he is called, played by Delia Boccardo, I believe it was. But especially I love his relationship with his daughter, with Anita in this. I mean, it feels so natural. You know, like after she like cleaned the apartment for him, and basically she asks like, "Did you do all this yourself?" No, the neighbor helped with the dusting, and he's like, "Oh, the dusting, yeah, the dusting." And it's so good. It's so beautiful. I love that stuff. How do you feel about the whole girlfriend daughter family thing?
Yeah, it is very wholesome. For me, at
Yeah,
least, I think I overall like it. I think it's probably the part of the movie that like genre freaks are going to be like the most like keep it moving, get to
yeah,
the
yeah,
plot
yeah.
and stuff like that. But it does eventually pay off later. I mean, I watched both of these films and I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on with ENZO Castellari's daughter, but his daughter does not do well in neither of these films. I mean, people talk about like Argento and his daughter,
Yeah.
Aja. But I mean, it's almost ENZO G. Castellari and Stefania Girolami. I mean, it's almost something else on these two. I don't
Yeah.
know what's happening, but yeah.
It's like, you know, Asia is. Asia is like, she was like, at least I think she was. I think she was 18, maybe, or 20. But anyway, she was an adult. Like, Enzo, what are you doing here? It's very.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that scene, because again, it's an emotional. It packs an emotional punch. Like Anita's death in this film. I mean, that like there aren't a lot of movies that can make me cry, like really. But that scene, and especially after when they're talking to Belly about what happened, that scene gets me every time. It's just it's so good. It's so
Yeah,
good.
it's brutal. I mean, like the way that she dies too. I mean, like they just like
Oh,
really run it over. That
horrible,
yeah.
horrible. But you know, it's like it's also like sort of karma, right? Because what's his name again? Fernando Rey's character. He did warn him, like, if you
He did,
go
yeah.
against the cabal, then you know you're gonna have to pay. You're the one who's gonna pay, and not you yourself. But you know they're going to come after your loved ones, and boy, do they come after the loved ones. I mean, the girlfriend is kind of spared, although she is beaten pretty badly. But I mean, Anita's death, man, it's like, wow, they really. And that's another thing. Nowadays, I feel like they would be afraid to go that far, maybe in films like this.
Oh yeah. I mean, no way. I mean, American films definitely not. I mean, maybe some other countries, but I'm not even sure. I mean, feels like people were just willing to just go all the way. I mean, and I appreciate that. I appreciate about that about this era of filmmaking, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the other filmmakers, the ones that would lean even more heavily into the grindhouse, would go even more that way. Something like Almost Human or whatever. But yeah, this one doesn't pull its punches at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. And by the way, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love American films as well. There are a lot of American films that I love. I just feel like nowadays, like you said, they are trying to play the safe game, and I don't know. That just doesn't work for me that well. But maybe they are just afraid of how people will perceive it. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
No.
who knows?
So,
Yeah.
So do you have any other like positives that you want to mention about high crime?
Let's see. Yeah, I was going to ask you which version of it you watched, because there's actually been some confusion about different versions. Did it end with Nero imagining his own death?
Oh, right. Yeah, it did. It did end that way, actually.
Okay.
Let me just show you. I watched the version of. I got the latest Blue Underground one.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly what I watched as well.
Yeah. And by the way, it's like I guess the footage had like vinegar syndrome or something, or deteriorated in a sort of way. But the final act where you have the shootout and stuff, it's a little bit, it's very grainy and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe they couldn't rest. This was probably the best restoration they could do. I have no idea, but
yeah, I do know the backstory on that, because I went
really?
to they
Okay.
screened in they screened High Crime in my local cinema back in May.
Oh, really?
And it was actually hosted by Bill Lustig, who is the owner of Blue Underground and director of Maniac and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and so he talked a bit about the restoration. And basically, the film had been re-released a couple of years ago by Studio Canal in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
And they were basically missing the last reel of the film. So it just ended at a very random point. And so they've had to find basically another source for that reel, which is why it looks a bit different. And then they went ahead and restored that. So that's why I wanted to ask about that, just because like some people have been watching the film and it's just missing that whole last shootout and set piece. And the film has to play very, very differently if you're missing that. But yeah, no, I mean, I think I talked about most of what I really like about the film. I mean, we haven't talked too much about the score. That's another thing I like about the film, where the score is kind of moving in a different direction. I know that's a thing that you're a fan of as well, and a lot of these Italian genre films. This one done by the Angelis brothers, and it definitely moves more into kind of that rock direction that a lot of these soundtracks would go. So a little different from kind of like your Morricones or your Luis Bacalovs, those sorts of composers. So I really like the soundtrack. I think it's very, very catchy. You played it over the intro to this episode. So I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah. This is just the good stuff right here.
Yeah. I do that with every episode that I do. So, just a little nugget there. But no, I love soundtracks of the Italian films. I love soundtracks in general. Like soundtracks is like, that's my jam. Film music is just like, but the soundtracks of the Italian and European cinema is like, I can listen to that all the time. It's like, it's so unique. I don't think anyone has made soundtracks like that in the world. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I also wanted to mention I'm going back to the Blu-ray in a bit, by the way, but I also wanted to mention, you mentioned it already, but the action, of course, in this film. I mean, sometimes it's just a hell of a lot of fun to get like an insane car chase scene. And, Castellari says like, usually they do that as the climax. The hell with it. Let's just put it at the start of the movie. It's pretty great. And they have some pretty great stunts as well. I mean, the one where they have to swerve and they like jump like the car over the road while the ambulance is I mean, that's insane stuff. That's really great.
Yeah, and super dangerous. I mean, I love it. I mean,
it's great. It's great. Absolutely, it's awesome. Now comes the hard question. I always ask this because we have talked about the positives. The downside is, do you have any negatives when it comes to this film? Or issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think this film is solid overall. I do think you could probably play around a little bit with the pacing of stuff. I think at certain points it can get a little bogged down and clunky,
Mm.
but usually it's kind of like that thing that definitely Jollies and Argento in particular would do, where it's just like all of a sudden you just have this someone getting killed in like a really creative set piece or something like that, and just draws you back in. And I feel like it has just enough of that to keep it moving, but there's probably a little bit you could play around with in terms of like the plotting and maybe stuff with the family elements too that you could cut down just a little bit. You know, wouldn't necessarily need to remove the whole thing to just tighten it up a little bit. But you know, beyond that, which is kind of a nitpick, if anything, I don't have too much.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Look. This movie runs. Let me see. This movie runs the length of 103 minutes. It's 103 minutes long. So it's like an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, that's a very respectable like run. I think. I mean, like most films today are like 2.5 hours long, which
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just saying it feels kind of good when you just get in and out, you know, get out quickly. So I think the runtime is pretty good actually. Again, I have watched it on this. And by the way, the transfer itself on this Blu-ray is like the picture quality is awesome. It's
it
great.
is. Yeah.
But you know, like you, before I go into my issues with it, you talked about the ending, and it's right. I actually I have the Studio Canal version as well, and basically it does when you have them like talking of like let's go to the docks, like to do the final drug run where the cops finally gun everybody down. But it's basically they say let's go to the docks, and then it cuts to Franco Nero just looking out over the water, and the credits roll.
Wow. I mean, knowing what the ending actually is too. I mean, like people are
Yeah,
missing out. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And it's and I don't know what it is, but I didn't know what that was. But you made I want to thank you for making that clear because I didn't know that. But okay, that makes sense. So so yeah, I watched this of course, and it's this is a fantastic release. And it has a soundtrack, by the way. Just saying, just saying. But in terms of negatives, I only have one actually. I only have one negative, which is not really a negative. It's more like again like a nitpick thing, like you. I mean, and it's a problem I have with most movies from the Italian cinema. The dubbing is horrible. The dubbing is horrible, and it's you know, usually it doesn't bother me as much because I usually I watch the Italian version just with English subtitles. But I have seen so many dubbed movies now. I mean, dubbing in Italian cinema is just really really bad. So if you're ever going to watch this, just watch the original and with English subtitles.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. I mean, that's definitely one of those things that puts people off, especially if they're not used to it too.
yeah.
Um, I watched the Italian version as well. I did see the English dubbed one back in the theaters because that's what they were screening. So,
Oh yeah,
um, yeah, but I think I prefer the Italian as well. It just feels more
yeah.
natural.
Yeah, I feel yeah, exactly. And it's you know, I mean it's again it's an acquired taste, but you know, again, having watched so many movies with like the dubbing on it, I know how much that irritates me. And so, you know, and I have seen this movie actually in the English version as well. So
Sure.
it's the dubbing is it's kind of
Yeah.
tricky. But it's
I
really yeah,
Oh, I
sorry.
was gonna say, I think one thing that does get lost a little bit in translation too is the comedy just flows quite a bit better. I always find the comedy to be pretty clunky when it's dubbed into English,
Yeah.
and when you're just in Italian, it has more of like I don't know that Italian flow and flair to it that I think comes off a bit more naturally.
Yeah, totally, totally, exactly. So, you know, so that's like my only real negative with this film. It's you know, I mean, the pacing doesn't bother me as much. I mean, it's you know, but I think, like you said, some audiences might be turned off a little bit by their family stuff, and you know, but it's I don't know, it never really bothered me. my only nitpick, I would say, is like it's the dubbing. So, but that's like my only real negative with it. So, if you don't have anything more to say about High Crime, we can go into ratings, because I rate on this show actually. So
Sure.
I rate the movies. So do you want to start or should I?
Why don't you go ahead and then I'll
Okay.
piggyback.
So yeah, High Crime again. This is it one of my favorite Poliziotteschi's? I don't know. I think there are some of them who have like political context and social commentary that are just a little bit more favorable to me. But for what this movie does and for what it is, I think it's a very solid, great Poliziotteschi film of the genre, and I'm a really big fan of this film. I really love this film, so I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Wow. Okay, great. For me, at least, I think this film, I don't think it's quite my favorite Poliziotteschi either. It's definitely, I think, one that represents the genre really well. So if I was trying to think of like a good introduction of Poliziotteschi, this one would definitely be pretty high up in the list. Kind of like how Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I don't think is the absolute best giallo, but it's like usually one of the best to start people off, just because it has so many of the right elements and so many of the things that appeal to people there. So yeah, for me at least, this one would be one of like the top recommendations for someone that's just looking to kind of get started in the genre. So I would rate this a 8 out of 10.
An 8. Okay, very good, very good. Very respectable. That's good. That's good. And by the way, the question that you're asking, I'm going to come back to that at the end of the podcast. So about which movies to start with and stuff. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah. So okay, so you give it an 8, I give it a 9. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid. So okay, that was High Crime. Shall we move into the Big Racket then?
Let's do it.
All right. So the Big Racket, again, ENZO G.CASTELLARI. This was released in 1976, only 3 years after. That's pretty incredible. So again, quick synopsis. Police Inspector Nico Palmieri battles against hoodlums terrorizing Rome, extorting cash from local shop and bar owners. Again, why would you spoil the whole movie in the synopsis? Really, like, what? Why? But anyway, it's very funny. So, yeah, the Big Racket. I'm a very big fan of this film. But again, like we did with the first one, before we go into positives and negatives and stuff, what are some of your overall thoughts on the Big Racket? And also, how do you look at this movie in contrast to High Crime?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I see this as a very, very Castellari film, even more than High Crime, perhaps. I think the way that he shoots action and stuff like that really stands out as very unique and very specific to him in terms of Italian cinema. I did recently do a video on this, and for me at least, it's like there's a certain joy there that to the action and stuff like that, and I feel that more than anything in this film. And it reminds me a lot of kind of like Hong Kong cinema. I'm not sure if you're a fan of that, but stuff that came out in the 80s and in the 90s, and where they're just doing crazy stuff. And there's just like, look at what I can do. Like great use of slow-mo, things like that. So for me, at least, yeah, it's a little rompier. There's a little bit less of that kind of years of lead commentary coming into this one. Yeah. But I think if I'm like looking for a good time and just like a fun romp to watch, this might actually be like very top of my list as far as like the Italian crime films go.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is actually one of my favorite Poliziotteschi's of the entire genre. I really dig this film, and I think I think it does have some social commentary in it, and I'll get to it when we get to that point. But yeah, ENZO G.CASTELLARI is so like innovative in this film. He's really like as we see from interviews and stuff, he also like improvised a lot on the set, which I love. I love when directors are daring and bold enough to sort of deviate from the script just a little bit. I mean, the script should be your like narrative thrust, but don't be afraid to go into like a sort of side angle and just look at it from a different perspective. And he tries some really interesting things in this film. For example, like I'm just gonna talk about one of my positives right away. Like, this film, Enzo G.CASTELLARI, he goes to great lengths to prove to the audience that you don't need to have like an insane, crazy car chase to have a good action movie. I mean, this movie is filled with action, and it doesn't even have like a car chase like it does High Crime. I mean, there are car scenes, but it doesn't really have like a car chase. And especially the car crash scene, which is probably the most famous one, of course, with Fabio Testi in the car, like rolling up. He made that up like right at that moment, like he saw some. I think he saw some kind of like construction like wheel like thing, and it's like he just told the prop guys or whatever, hey, just make a car in that so we can do this whole. And Fabio Testi used to be a stuntman, so he had no problem with it. But it's
and it looks incredible.
Exactly. And that kind of innovative filmmaking, not just with Castellari, but just in Italian, but also in Hong Kong cinema. I love that, man. It's so great. How do you feel about the action in this film?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think you highlighted the one car scene, which, funnily enough, especially for an Italian crime film, is like a car scene without a moving car, at least not like a car chase scene. But yeah, I mean, the action of this film, I think, is excellent. Castellari, I think, has said in the past how he thinks that final shootout is his like best set piece that he's done. I actually think I might even prefer the middle train fight more.
That's mine too. Yeah. I love that. That's mine too. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you have like that situation, like the way the step piece is staged is just really smart, where you have the police thinking they're cornering them, but as is the theme throughout the whole movie, the racketeering mob is one step ahead, so they're actually the ones surrounding the police. It feels very much out of a Western. It's even at like kind of a train yard and things like that, and then you have like that added little flavoring where you have the skeet shooter just stumbling onto the scene, and he just starts picking off some of like the gang, and it's like, yeah, this is pretty fantastic. Just the way it's staged reminds me a lot of Westerns, and just Castellari is just so good at like kind of blocking different scenes where you are creatively showing people getting shot. And you can tell he's like really a stuntman director, where we have someone like that was previously a stuntman, Fabio Testi, in here, but you just have like the stunt guys being able to do stuff. And in that sense, it reminds me so much of the Hong Kong ones, where they really probably put too many stunt people in charge there. And you just have people doing just crazy stuff that's probably irresponsible, probably shouldn't be done, but it looks amazing. And it's aged incredibly well, where these days it's just like, yeah, we're going to enhance our CG budget, and it looks bad in comparison.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it feels when he what's the character's name again? Oh my god. The like you said, the guy in the train where he goes to help the cops. Like it feels so natural as well. It has a very, because of course his wife is like what are you doing? You shouldn't interfere with this. And it's like, look, those people are in need. I have to help them. Come on. So it's like really, it feels so natural, because I would probably do the same thing in that situation. And of course, again, it's also my favorite action scene in the film. And of course, also it packs a punch, because like Nico's partner, played by Salvatore Borghese, I believe, who was also a stunt actor, gets shot down in this, like, oh my, he gets how many bullets does he catch? I have no idea.
Yeah, he gets the slow motion Castellari treatment.
Yeah, exactly. But it's very brutal. It's very brutal, and it's it's fantastic. It's fantastic, absolutely. So, what other like positive things do you have to say about The Big Racket?
I mean, for me at least, this film just keeps moving and moving, and perhaps it's just because like it's just set piece after set piece, or it's like we go from like that, and then in like the next scene is immediately showing you why the skeet shooter's wife didn't want him to participate because like they get
Yeah,
revenge on him very quickly.
yeah,
They don't mess around that racketeering mob. So yeah, I mean, the opening scene too really just draws me into the movie every time I watch it, where you have like those colors and stuff like that. It's almost like, oh, are we in a Giallo or something like that? And but then you have that great DeAngelis Brothers score comes in, and the score here I think I like maybe even more than High Crime, where it's just kicking in. It's super memorable.
yeah,
So yeah, and then you just have like that great slow motion too, that Castellari. I feel like in High Crime you could tell he's like starting to use it here and there. But in this film and Kyoma, and I think they came out the same year, he's like kind of mastered the art of slow-mo, where he's just using it in all kinds of different things. And I think it looks great.
yeah. I kind of forgot. Did Kiyama come out in the same year? Probably did, but
I think so. Yeah.
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And for me, at least, those two are probably my two favorites from Castellari. So
really
1976.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's like that. Yeah, but that's multitasking, right? We just shoot two movies at once.
Yeah.
Like, if the like the second unit, you take care of this stuff. I have to go to Spain to shoot my Western.
Yeah.
It's very fun. But what I also love about this film, it's one of the big things actually, is that one thing I can't stand in modern day movies is when the protagonist or the heroes will just do things willy-nilly and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But in this film, like all of the main characters have like great motivations for doing what they're doing and becoming vigilantes. You understand each and every character, like why they are joining that group. And all the different personas, whether it's Gianni, that's the name from the train
Oh,
person. Yeah, Gianni. I mean, like what they did to his wife, or that's my favorite one, Luigi, played by Renzo Palmer, I believe. Again, with his daughter, Stefania Castellari. Again,
What are you doing, Castellari?
Renzo, what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing? But also Luigi for losing his daughter. Like, if there is one person you understand for doing what he does, I think it's him. Like, if you kill someone's kid, like that's it basically. That's pretty much all you need right there. And those instances like always get me. Again, it makes me emotional. But just having your main protagonist have just great motivations, which I think is missing from some modern day movies. So how do you feel about that? Like with the motivations of the characters and their drive to do what they're going to do?
I think it's done very well, especially because like he has to cover basically half of a Dirty Dozen here. So like I think it's like 6 of them that comes together at the end.
Yeah.
So he's got to be really efficient about it. He's got to like go just scene to scene. And I think all of them are pretty clearly done, with maybe the exception of Romano Pupo's character, who I think they're like, oh, he needs a passport or whatever, which is fine because I'm happy to have Romano Pupo join the set piece at the end. But I think they do just a great job casting like different character actors that worked in Italian cinema at the time, or even not in Italian cinema, in like Vincent Gardenia's case. But like Renzo Palmer, I'm glad you mentioned him. I think for me, at least, he's my favorite of those. He has such a memorable role here. Like it's one of those ones that really sticks with you. This movie in general sticks with me. It's very sticky in terms of like memory and stuff. That's like, I just have fond memories of this film, even if it's been a couple of years since I've seen it. I did watch this recently, but like it's one that, I'm happy to watch at any point just because like I remember it so clearly. But yeah, Renzo Palmer, just one of those great Italian faces. I think this is one of my favorite roles that he's in. And just all of the different guys that come together. I'm forgetting the other actors. Romano Pupo, I know is one of them, but they're all great and they're just all memorable faces. And if you've seen a lot of these different crime films that they're making at the time, you're going to recognize a lot of those guys. And so that's one of the other great joys of these different genre films. It's like, oh, that's the guy that, you know, got shot in the nuts in the other Castellari film. And
Yeah,
stuff like that.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know, like you said, they have like each character has like a scene where, you know, it's very efficient, like you said, why they do what they do. Except for like one thing, which I'm going to talk about. I have one issue with that, but I'm going to talk about that at the end there. But what I also want to mention, and this is like what I was talking about, the social commentary and stuff. You know, while it's not as heavy as like other Poliziotteschi, like you said, it's more fun. But I do think that this movie raises some really amazing like moral questions about, you know, justice and revenge and stuff like that. And you know, just it asks a lot of interesting questions, like, you know, should we rely and trust in the law and the police department to protect us, you know, or, you know, at which point do you decide and can you even decide whether or not that's enough, and are you really free and justified to pursue what is basically private justice, basically. And in that regard, I think this movie does a very good job at raising those sort of moral questions. I mean, no argument. The racketeers are like the scum of the earth, but it's
They're
like
terrible.
yeah, they're really terrible people. Like one in particular, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, but just the moral questions that it raises, you know, it's because it's like they are questions that you would ask yourself as well. So I think that is, in that way, it's a very interesting sort of story to be told there. How do you see that sort of angle of this film?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. For me, at least, it's not necessarily like a principal focus of the film, but it's definitely something that is going on in the background. And in that sense, it does make an interesting companion to Castellari's other film, Street Law, which is like more, I think it's probably a little more direct about like the vigilante justice, but this one's definitely like a vigilante film as well. For me, at least, I see this film a little bit more towards that sort of mythological Western angle than perhaps like the more social commentary that's happened. Not to say it's not there. That's just the lens that I particularly see the film with. So I think it's interesting. I'd have to think about it a little bit more to determine exactly how I feel about how it approaches those, but it definitely like does think about those things. And I know that the racketeering mob was a real thing that was happening during that time. So some of it is certainly based off of like some things that were going on in Italy at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm not saying that like it's a very deep thing or whatever. It's very much on the surface, like it's surface level sort of social commentary, and it's kind of thrown away in the end when, you know, it doesn't really matter anyway, because big spoilers, all of the heroes die in the end. So except for Nico, of course, but he gets to like beat up some crates with his shotgun. So there's that. But I mean, all of that doesn't really matter at the end of the movie because they all die basically. So it kind of feels like, okay, it's about justice, but there is no real justice here. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at it as well. But you mentioned the racketeers, you know, and just like the cast as well. We mentioned Renzo Palmer, Vincent Cardenia, you know, all of those people. But my favorite, and I was going to talk about this, my favorite is actually one of the members of the racketeer people. The actress name is Marcella Michelangeli, I believe it is. She plays like the female racketeer in that. Oh my, I don't think I've hated a character as much as I hate her in this film. She is such a, I don't want to say the word. But, I mean,
she's a great villain. Yeah.
She's so bad. She's so terrible, you know? It's like really, oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way about that character, or what? Like,
No, I know. I mean, she's great. I mean, she does exactly what she should be doing in the role.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
for me at least, like the lawyer that's revealed at the end to be like the chief villain is like kind of whatever. But she's like the villain I remember about the film. It's
yeah.
like her super cruel female. It definitely stands out because it's not usual to have those sorts of roles in these movies going on.
No, no, I think, and I remember. I think I've heard this anyway. I think I remember that like it was a last minute casting kind of thing
Oh,
because
interesting.
I think Enzo said that originally the character was going to be like another male or whatever something.
Sure.
But again, Enzo improvised and just like, well, let's have a female in there as well. But it's like, yeah, and like you said, the lawyer is like, it's like, oh yeah, of course the racketeers are, basically, backhanded or handed like, alibis by the corrupt, evil lawyer.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's like that's like a given. It's like, oh, of course he's a part of it as well. So that's kind of like on the surface there, but yeah, but you mentioned the soundtrack as well. I don't know which one I prefer actually, because High Crime has some really great themes as well. But I think the main theme of which I played at the intro again, that's definitely one of my favorite like pieces of soundtrack. It's great. It's really great.
Yeah,
So,
no, I love it. I love both of the soundtracks here. I mean, they're both done by the same people, so I mean, I think they're
yeah,
they do great work in both of these, and definitely more kind of in like that rock vein rather than kind of like your Morricone scores.
yeah. Yeah, again, yeah, and it's very interesting because when you talk to people, like everybody, when you talk about Italian cinema, everybody says, "Oh, Ennio Morricone," and I love Ennio Morricone, but I mean there are a lot of other Italian like composers like Fabio Frizzi and of course Maurizio. The guys who I always forget their names, but Maurizio De Angelis, the Angelis, that's the name. They are some other ones. There are other composers in Italian cinema, but I think it's so funny that everybody only remembers like, oh, Ennio Morricone.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and a lot of the other composers were just great too. I mean, Bruno Nicolai, who's probably a little bit more in like kind of Morricone's lane too, but I mean, Goblin, of course. I mean, you have
Goblin.
so many that are doing like totally different things on these. I mean, for me at least, it is peak soundtrack. It's like the best, my most favorite era of like just different music and stuff being put onto movies.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm forgetting his name. Riz Ortolani, of course. That's
Oh yeah,
another
yeah.
famous one right there. So yeah, great stuff. All great stuff. So do you have any more positives about this, or do you want to talk about some negatives?
I think the other thing that I'd point out too is just like the way that it's schemed, like it's just really smart plotting too. I like just the whole concept of like coming together for like Dirty Dozen, but because this is an Italian film, we have like 30 minutes rather than like 2.5 hours to do it
Yeah,
in like Dirty Dozen. So it just comes together really fast, but it's like, oh, I see where this is going and I love it.
yeah.
And like the way they all come together and like that last set piece and the way it's just all staged is just really, really perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, it doesn't really take time to like drag its feet or slow down or whatever. I think it
Mhm.
moves at a pretty good pace as well. I think the pacing in this one is a little bit better than High Crime, actually, for me anyway.
I would agree. Yeah, I wouldn't put that complaint here. The other interesting thing I had to point out too is I like the tone of the film. For me, at least, this film is very, very cruel at different points. Like, I mean, you have multiple sexual assaults. You have the gang, especially the female, as you point out, is like very, very mean spirited, very cruel. But somehow the film Castellari manages to keep the tone like very light. Usually, if a film is like too heavy or something, I like wouldn't want to watch it as much as I would care to watch Big Racket. So I don't know
Right.
what he did in particular, but whatever different alchemy he did in sort of creation of this film, I think it works well to create this tone that has like these more hard hitting elements to it, but it's still very, very watchable and doesn't feel like overly burdensome to watch.
No, that's true. That's true. I think the ones that are the probably the most brutal and the most like rough to see are again what happens to Renzo Palmer's daughter and
Yeah.
the wife of Gianni, I think his name was. Yeah, Gianni, the train guy. What they do to his wife. I think those two are the most horrible out of all of them. But apart from that, you're right. They are pretty. I don't know what he does, but he makes it feel a bit lighter than it's supposed to, I guess. And I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily think the movie needed that, but because there is already this movie is so fun already anyway. But yeah, I don't know, but it's very interesting. And like you said, I agree. It's very interesting how he did that. Yeah. So do you have any like negatives or issues that you have with the Big Racket?
Honestly, not really. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's the tonal mismatch that we're just talking about is kind of interesting, but I wouldn't even say that's a negative necessarily. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think, rack my brain, see if there's anything that, uh, yeah, no, I don't really. I mean, maybe you could have had like a better final villain instead of like the lawyer, but
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
such a small nitpick. I mean, honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. So
You don't have to hold back or anything. Just if you whatever you want to say, you can say. So, but
no, I
so
mean, this is one of my favorites. So
okay,
there's very little for me to nitpick here.
okay, okay. So I move into my negatives, and I got to tell you, if this because it's a pretty big negative actually, and if this negative wasn't in the film, this would have been a perfect film for me. But I feel like this is a problem, so I have to talk about this. And I don't know if this was like a creative choice by Enzo or maybe the producers demanded it or whatever. As much as I love this movie, I always have like one with every movie. I always have one big rule. It's you show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. That's very important. Show, don't tell. And while they show you like all the reasons of the main characters, why they form the vigilante group and stuff, what I feel like is a bit dishonest here, they suddenly cut away and kind of censor Luigi's daughter committing suicide.
Mm.
And for me anyway, this is just me, but for me, this is a big no-no. This is a big no-no. And it doesn't have to be exploitation or anything like that, but I just wanted one scene there. You've given all the other characters like one scene. I just wanted one scene. Castellari could have, I don't know, could have shown her like throwing herself off a ledge or cutting her own wrists with a piece of like metal or something from the construction site, whatever. Just one scene. That's all I would have needed, and something like that. And I kind of feel like that was kind of like a cop out in a way, because when you tell the audience that she killed herself after she was raped, basically, I feel like you have sort of an obligation to show that to the audience, because again, it's show don't tell, and you show everyone else basically, but not her. And I don't know if he wanted to protect Stefania, or maybe the producers wouldn't go with it, or I don't know, whatever reason. But that for me is kind of like something that takes this movie down a bit, because it feels a bit dishonest. Like, you've given the motivations for everyone else, but all of a sudden for her it doesn't apply. And I don't know, that's always been like a thing with me. How do you feel about that?
Interesting. I mean, honestly, it had not even crossed my mind until you mentioned it. But now that you do, I can certainly understand your complaint there. Just because you're right, everyone else has shown very very clearly and that's a pretty clear omission from there. And I mean, like, you wouldn't think that they'd be afraid to show it just because, like, they showed the sexual assault, so you'd think that they could show, like, the suicide. So I don't know why. I mean, I wonder if they shot the scene and maybe it just didn't turn out well or something. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, it hadn't crossed my mind before, but I could certainly understand that complaint.
Yeah, but that has always been my thing, really. And on rewatching it, because I rewatched it, like, actually I rewatched it yesterday. So and I think I've seen this movie like 3 or 4 times now. And
yeah, same for me.
And again, on rewatching it yesterday, it still kind of bothers me a bit. I don't know. It kind of feels a bit like a cop-out or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know what happened there. But that's pretty much my only negative I have with this film. So if you have nothing else to say, we can go into ratings again.
Sure.
Okay, so I went first with high crime. Why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great Poliziotteschi. I think it stands out as being more different. It's not as mimicked as something like high crime. So I think it's I think it's just, if you want to see a film that's fairly unique in the genre, that's like combining a lot of different kind of like sub-genre types of like Dirty Dozen and things like that. And I think it's got some of the absolute best action in the genre. So for me, at least, this is one of the big highlights. I'd give this a 9 out of 10.
Okay, great. 9 out of 10. That's good. That's good. The 9 out of 10. I'll put it down. By the way, before I go into my rating, like what version did you watch? Do you have like what do you have, a Blu-ray or what like?
I think I watched the same as you. The Arrow Blu-ray.
The Arrow Blu-ray right here.
Yeah.
I watched this one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, which came with Heroin Busters too, which is another...
Oh, you have that box as well. Yeah, there you go.
I do, yeah. That's another fun one. I think that one's a little thinner than this film. Not as good, but it's definitely like the score is, I mean, score is amazing. I mean, it's a big tangent, but I mean, like Goblin and like Fabio Testi. I mean, like it's that one's pure comfort food. This one for me is like definitely one of the highlights of the genre.
Yeah. It's we're not talking about Heroin Busters, but the soundtrack is great. But you're right. It's a bit more of a flat film. It's more like a roller coaster ride kind of.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, some really great stunts. I mean, that one where he goes down the escalator. I mean,
no, there is great stuff in there. There is great stuff in there for sure, but it's definitely not on the level of this. And
no,
that's fine. I mean, not everything has to be, silent action or the big racket, but it's just something. But yeah, I watched this one, and there are some great. By the way, have you seen that one? The interview with Fabio Testi on this?
I don't think I've watched that yet.
Okay, watch it. It's a great interview with Fabio Testi on this one. So, but yeah, I watched this one. So, so you gave it a 9 out of 10. In terms of my rating, I really love this film. This is probably one of my favorite Poliziotteschi's. Apart from that big negative that I have with it, it doesn't really bring the movie down. It's just something that I notice all the time. But yeah, this is one of my favorite Poliziotteschi movies, and I always look for rewatchability with films, and this is one that I can watch over and over and over again. And I'm probably gonna watch this later in the year again, probably. so yeah, it's I absolutely love this. I also give it a 9 out of 10. So we have a tie on that one.
Yeah.
So it's a great film. It's really great, really great. So excuse me. Those were the movies that we're going to cover. Now, as a last thing, I always do this with my audience and my fellow YouTubers who are here. I have like one discussion point that I want to go into with you, and
Sure.
You already kind of mentioned it at the start of the video, at the podcast. For people who are new to the genre, for people who are trying to get into not just Poliziotteschi's, but also Italian cinema and stuff. What kind of, since we're talking about Poliziotteschi's here, let's keep it on Poliziotteschi's. What kind of Poliziotteschi's would you recommend to like newcomers in the genre?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably cater it slightly towards the person that I'm talking to, knowing if I know anything about their tastes. But I definitely think high crime is definitely like a pretty safe pick as far as that goes for one we've mentioned. But if I know the person that was really into action cinema and things like that, or is coming over from like Hong Kong cinema or something like that, I think The Big Racket is probably the first one I would recommend then.
Right.
But another safe pick is certainly some of the Fernando De Leo ones. So Caliber 9 is a good one. And if I know that someone was really into sleazy grindhouse cinema, which I am as well, Almost Human is like a hard hitter.
Oh, I mean, isn't that? I mean, I love Almost Human like you do. I mean, oh my God! I mean, it's Thomas Milian's best performance ever. But okay, but isn't that like a little too heavy? I mean, Almost Human. I mean, Almost Human is pretty rough.
Yeah. I think it's be if someone was like, someone who's into giallos or something, and they're like, oh, I really like Strip Nude for Your Killer or something. It's like, oh, you're a sicko too. So maybe Almost Human is the one to watch. That would be very specialized. It's like, is if someone was, if I knew they were like kind of like a horror fan, something like that. I think the Lenzi ones are probably a little bit more in that vein, because it's like you're going to have a reaction to that film, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's for me anyway. I don't think I would pick movies like Silent Action or the Violent Professionals or stuff like that, because those are pretty heavy-handed films that have there's a lot of subtext in there that is sometimes quite depressing and kind of like nihilistic and stuff. So I don't know if I would recommend those immediately. I mean, we love those films, but I don't know if new audience would. It might be a little heavy for those people. I think, if I would pick one, I think it would be like something like Syndicate Sadists, maybe.
Oh, interesting.
I feel like that's a relatively safe bet. I mean, it deals with kidnapping basically, but it's that's not really, it's not all that graphic and bloody as well. And again, Thomas Milian is kind of like just a straightforward hero in that one.
Yeah, as far as Lenzi goes, it's fairly restrained, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. So I would probably pick that one. And even though sometimes it's kind of rough, in kind of a funny way, I guess, I would also say The Big Racket. I think The Big Racket is something that I don't think a lot of people would be like opposed to something like this. I think this is probably a safe bet to watch. But again, Syndicate Sadist is also a relatively safe one, I feel like. I think, High Crime is probably one of the safest, like you said. I don't think there is a lot wrong with watching this movie. This is just like a fun time. So that's probably, but it's probably those three, probably for me anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, but you as kind of like a sidetrack here, you mentioned like grindhouse movies and stuff that you love that as well. Like, can you name some examples of that? Like, what movies do you like grindhouse wise?
Well, I'm just thinking of a little bit more of the lurid Poliziotteschi films, like a lot of Umberto Lenzi. I mean, the cannibal subgenre, of course, is very grindhousey, I would say. Yeah, so I mean, I like it. I like fairly. I'm not bothered by sleaze, and sometimes I do enjoy it when films are willing to go all the way out there. And so that's something I consistently respect about kind of the Italian films, 70s and 80s. So.
So, but do you like the cannibal genre, or is that kind of, or goes that, or does that go a little bit too far for you?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but
Mm.
I do like it. Yeah, I mean, I think Cannibal Holocaust is actually a really good film. So I do like.
I own it 4 times.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. And I wouldn't say any of them are necessarily my absolute favorite films, other than maybe Cannibal Holocaust. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm not bothered by that genre at all. I mean, even Castellari's dad did one of those films. I think Zombie Holocaust or something like that. If you're talking about like Grindhouse,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I love both the cannibal and the zombie films. So that's they are. I can see why people might be turned off from those a little bit, because they are a lot gorier and graphic and stuff. Um, Even more so than giallos, I believe. Although sometimes giallos go there as well, but I can see why people are not really a big fan of those. But I love both of those. So but it's just something that I wanted to ask you. So in closing, apart from ENZO G.CASTELLARI, again, if you would recommend like one director to like a newcomer in the genre that we both love, if you have to recommend one director for like any newcomer, doesn't matter, whatever, what director would you recommend to people?
I think it's probably the safest answer, but I think Fernando DeLeo, his
Right,
like little run of Eurocrime films from like Caliber 9 onwards
right,
is a really solid run. And like he's one of those that you're going to see consistently mentioned. So the Milieu trilogy, so Italian Connection, Caliber 9, and The Boss. Those
yeah,
three are all great and all kind of typify the genre really well. His approach is, I think if you look at it more holistically, it's fairly different from Castellari's, in a good way. That makes both directors kind of stand out. Yeah, he's just focused on slightly different things than Castellari, who I think is, has a lot of strengths, but I think is like the main reason that I come back to his films again and again is like his staging and the action. So yeah, I'd say
right,
DeLeo. Yeah.
right. I mean, it's very cliche, but I always say Dario Argento. It's just because with Dario Argento, it's basically you get what you pay for, and it's like he doesn't like give you promises that he won't keep. Like it's like, I'm doing giallos, so you're gonna get giallos, and it's kind of that's kind of it. So it's very cliche, but I always say just go to Dario Argento.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I love Argento too. I was thinking more just in terms of Poliziotteschi's and stuff,
oh
but
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
Argento. Yeah, Argento. Absolutely. I mean, I can
yeah.
agree with everything you said just there.
You can't, yeah, you can't really go wrong there. So yeah, I think we talked about pretty much everything we wanted to talk about here. So and we're like an hour and a half into this podcast or stream. So I usually keep these like an hour and a half. So
Okay.
if you don't have anything more to talk about, I'm just gonna start my closing off and stuff like
Sure.
that. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for watching. Everybody who is watching or who's leaving comments or whatever, feel free to leave comments in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my points of view? Do you agree with James's point of view? Or do you disagree? That's fine too. Just be respectful, leave respectful comments. But thank everybody for watching. And James, I want to thank you for being here today. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you had fun too.
Yeah, no. It was a blast. Yeah.
Okay, good, very good. And I always ask this of all my guests, but hopefully you will be able to. Hopefully you're up to do a live stream together again in the future, maybe.
Yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk about these different films. So for sure.
Cool. Okay. We'll keep in touch. We'll keep in touch then. So again, thank you for being here. That means a lot. So before I close off the stream, finally, I always ask this: where can people find you, James?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube as well. Italian Poliziotteschi and Gialli Reviews. Not just doing reviews there, but doing like different lists and things like that. So if that hits your interest, I mean, if you listened all the way to the end of this podcast, it's probably up your alley. So check us out there.
Great. That's good. So search for his channel and give him a subscribe. Subscribe to his channel, leave him a like, or whatever YouTubers are doing here. So once again, thank you, James, for being here. Everybody, have a good weekend. Stay safe and healthy as always. And I'll see and talk to you guys. And we'll keep in touch, James. We'll keep in touch. Right. So bye, everyone. And James, see ya. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.